All right, pull up a chair. Welcome to this explainer. Today, I'm putting on my senior developer hat to walk you through something that is absolutely going to change how you pair program with AI. We're pulling back the curtain on file management, and specifically, we're looking at how Claude Code actually remembers your instructions. Let's dive right into this because, well, understanding the underlying architecture of your tools is exactly what separates the juniors from the seniors. So let me ask you a question that I know for a fact you've probably mumbled under your breath at least a dozen times this week. Are you just completely tired of constantly repeating your code style to your AI assistant? You know the drill. You start a new task, you ask for a component, and boom, it uses single quotes instead of double quotes, or it just totally ignores your team's specific error handling structure. You correct it, it apologizes, and then tomorrow you literally have to do it all over again. It's super frustrating, right?
Okay, section 1. Meet your AI's brain. We're talking about a really cool feature called auto memory. Basically, this is where Claude Code autonomously stores important information or instructions, so it can just load them up into every new session automatically. Now, the absolutely crucial word here is autonomously. This isn't you sitting down and writing out some massive, tedious documentation file. Think of auto memory sort of like having an incredibly eager, highly observant intern sitting right next to you. They're just quietly taking notes on everything you do, acting on their own to save that information rather than waiting around for you to explicitly dictate it to them.
Moving right along to section 2, under the hood mechanics.
Let's shift into tech lead mode for a second here. We don't just blindly trust magic. We want to actually see the underlying architecture. So look at this global file path. It's in your home directory under .claude, projects, and then memory. This right here is where Claude stores its primary memory.md file. But what's really wild is that Claude Code is smart enough to organize itself. So in addition to that main memory file, it might also just automatically create topic-specific memory files right in that exact same path, perfectly customized per project. It's literally maintaining a structured database of your coding habits. But look, as any good engineer knows, you've got to manage your system resources. So the really crucial point here is understanding the system constraints, which is represented by this number right here, 200. Claude doesn't just wildly dump endless gigabytes of memory into your prompt every single time you type a message. Actually, for every new conversation branch, it only loads the first 200 lines of that memory.md file. Now, if you start a brand new session from scratch, sure, it'll load the whole memory file to get a solid baseline. But for those new conversation branches, strictly capped at the first 200 lines. So why the strict limit? Well, look at this quote straight from the documentation. It says Claude is configured or taught to keep those memory files concise. The system is specifically engineered from the ground up to keep these auto-generated notes incredibly short and punchy. And it does this for the exact same reason we optimize our own code, right? To save processing power and to make sure it doesn't completely overload its own context window with a bunch of useless, outdated historical trivia.
All right, section 3, learning from your corrections. Let's actually walk through the practical workflow of how this happens. Step 1, Claude makes an error. Let's say it imports a library that we actually deprecated last month. Step 2, you call it out. In fact, maybe you've had to correct this exact specific mistake multiple times this week. Step 3, this is where the magic happens. Claude recognizes the pattern of your repeated corrections and autonomously writes that new rules straight into its memory.md file. You didn't even have to open a text editor. You didn't configure some messy JSON file. Just by naturally pairing, calling out mistakes, and correcting the code style, you're actively programming your AI's memory, so you literally never have to think about that specific error again.
Now on to section 4, the /memory command.
Anytime you type /memory inside of Claude Code, you unlock this really powerful suite of CLI tools. Using /memory allows you to do a bunch of things. You can completely enable or disable the auto memory feature for new project folders. It lets you configure your underlying settings. It allows you to quickly browse through any existing memory files your project has already generated. And, crucially, it lets you edit those memory files directly. If Claude ever learns a bad habit or maybe misunderstands a correction, you can just jump right in and fix it. You always have ultimate control over what the AI retains.
Section 5, auto versus manual memory.
This brings us to a massively important architectural decision that you're going to have to make on pretty much every project. It's the ultimate showdown, knowing exactly when to trust the autonomous learning versus when to step in and hard code the project rules yourself. Let's contrast these two systems side by side. On the left, we've got auto memory, living in those memory.md files. This is dynamic, it's autonomous, and it learns on the fly. On the right, we have manual instructions, which live in a file called Claude.MD. This is static, intentional, and strictly dictated by you. Look, auto memory is fantastic, it really is, but it's just an additional help. It is absolutely, positively not a replacement for a customized, static Claude.MD file sitting right there in your project root.
So write this golden rule down. The documentation says it best. If you know about a certain piece of information or a specific instruction that you absolutely want Claude Code to follow in all your sessions, you shouldn't just sit around and hope for it to memorize it. Instead, put it into Claude.MD yourself. Seriously, if it's a mission-critical security protocol or just an absolute non-negotiable architectural standard for your team, don't wait for Claude to make a mistake and learn from it. Hard-code it into Claude.MD. Save the auto memory for the nuances, the quick context, and those little data-good workflow quirks.
And, well, that brings us to the end of our explainer, but I really want to leave you with a final thought to chew on before you get back to your terminal. We've clearly established today that Claude Code is watching, it's learning, and it's autonomously writing down rules based entirely on how you interact with it. So I just have to ask, if your AI is autonomously learning from your daily coding habits, what exactly are you teaching it? Are your corrections clear? Are you leading by example? Because at the end of the day, a pair programmer is really only as good as the senior developer training it. Think about that next time you fire up your IDE.